Kansas City Chiefs, Jaylen Moore, the tackle from the San Francisco 49ers. He comes over for 2 years, $30 million. Christian Fulton at cornerback, 2 years, $20 million. Of course, they franchise tagged Trey Smith at starting right guard. And the other big move that they made is trading Joe Thuney for a 4. They're starting left guard. Nick Bolton also comes back for 3 years, $45 million at linebacker. Marquise Brown back as well, 1 year, up to $11 million for the Chiefs. So retaining some of their own. And the biggest one's going to be that Jaylen Moore move. And can he shore up the left tackle spot that's been a revolving door for the Chiefs the last few years?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like the Chiefs discussion, I think, has got to be about how they handled their offensive line, right? They trade away. So part of it is they trade away Joe Thuney to the Chicago Bears. They decided, like, look, he's been their best offensive lineman, but he's due a new deal. He's getting up in years. We already have a ton of money invested in this offensive line. We just can't throw the next contract at Joe Thuney. So they trade him away, but it means that they do keep Trey Smith. They tag him. That's a significant chunk invested in him. And then the left tackle fix, I guess, ends up being Jaylen Moore, who's this wildly unproven commodity at left tackle. So just a really interesting approach to this offensive line for Kansas City.
I wonder how much Mike Bergonzi's the new GM with the Titans, and he was the GM who makes the final call on Dan Moore making the $20 million. Bergonzi just got the job a month and a half ago, whatever it was. The Chiefs were having this discussion before. What do we do at left tackle? I wonder how much they knew where the market was going to go for Dan Moore. And they said, well, we can't do that. We have to, because they got Jaylen Moore early. Like they pounced on this. This wasn't like, hey, we're in on Dan Moore. We're in on Cam Robinson. We're in on the
He was clearly a target. Yeah.
They went and got Jaylen Moore. So I wonder how much they knew the market was going to go really high. Well, because if they brought in Dan Moore, you'd say, all right, at a similar price, they would say, okay.
Yeah.
But it's an unproven Jaylen Moore who has 446 career pass blocking reps. That's it. That's a season's worth of reps in 4 years for the 49ers. And again, it was pretty good, but honestly, he might be that same left tackle where he's fine a lot of games, but in the Eagles, facing the Eagles in the Super Bowl and maybe the Bills when they're trotting out Rousseau and Bosa, it could be trouble. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic here to see if Jaylen Moore does develop into a franchise left tackle for the Chiefs.
It's just such a small sample size to be gambling on. Like it might be the thing with Dan Moore is we have years of him starting and like it's a fairly extensive sample size that he is absolute ass against Myles Garrett and actually halfway decent against everybody else. With Jaylen Moore, it's like, you're dealing with this career where it's almost random, right? Like there's no pattern to when he has a good game versus a bad game because there's so few of the games that we don't know, number one, what his baseline will be. And number two, is there like a pattern of this is the type of player he's going to struggle against? This is where he's good. It's just like, there's sort of 8 games, 10 games, whatever it is total. And half of them are good, half of them are not. And who knows what that equals.
Tershawn Wharton also he signed a big deal with the Carolina Panthers. So he's out. I mean, the Chiefs have to replenish on the defensive line. I like what they did with Christian Fulton coming in. He can potentially compete with Jalen Watson to start opposite Trent McDuffie, or McDuffie kicks back into the slot. You have Jalen Watson, Christian Fulton on the outside. Good depth there. They brought Bolton back, who they called the Patrick Mahomes of the defense, although I know at least one Kansas City Chiefs fan who hates Nick Bolton, always criticizes him. But I think Bolton's been a fine player for them. And I like bringing back Marquise Brown. We pegged Marquise Brown with every wide receiver needy team.
Yeah.
Bring him in on the cheap. And with him, Xavier Worthy, and Rashee Rice coming back, if they're all healthy and out there and not suspended, then, it's a pretty good explosive trio.
Yeah. Hollywood Brown for 1 year, $11 million, I think is great. I mean, we basically didn't get to see the impact that he could have within that offense. I know he made it back for the playoffs, et cetera, but like, who knows how much of an impact not being there for the amount of time he was injured had on what they were actually going to use him for. I'm really interested to see what this offense looks like next year with the healthy complement of receivers, right? Xavier Worthy heading into the next year, Hollywood Brown back, Rashee Rice theoretically back from his knee injury. Like, what is that group going to look like now that they have all the pieces they want? Nick Bolton's interesting because I mean, he's the sort of classic old school, tackling machine, downhill thumper type of guy, but has real limitations in coverage or out in space. 15 million a year for him feels kind of rich to me. I might have moved on if I was Kansas City and you're juggling the contracts that you've got, the money that you've got to spend. I might have looked to go somewhere else with that cash, but I get it. I mean, those types of middle linebackers tend to have a leadership value, those types of things that are harder to quantify. So I think you can kind of give them the benefit of the doubt there. Christian Fulton, I'm not wild on as a player, but 2 years, $15 million is dirt cheap for that kind of gamble. So why not? And then, I think the fascinating element is it's the juggling act that they've done on the offensive line and where they've chosen to invest the money and those types of things. The rest of the moves, I think, have been pretty solid.
We got some sensitive people saying in the fix them in 5 minutes segment, we said the Chiefs are going to suck. We did not say that. Not even close. I think, by the way, the Jaylen Moore move, because remember every single Chiefs mock draft, we were like, hey, Josh Connolly's available. Just draft this next late first round left tackle. Having Jaylen Moore at left tackle, though, now you can look at the guard group, and if it's a Tyler Booker or some of the other guards, second, third, fourth round, it's easier to find a starting guard anyway in the first 3-4 rounds in the draft than it is a starting tackle late first or beyond. So they at least have a starting left tackle, whether you trust Jaylen Moore or not. And I think they use one of their top picks on a guard. And then the guard competition is Kingsley Suamataia. It's Mike Caliendo, who started there late last season, and then the new rookie. So I think that's what they've opened up the ability to do, right? Add some D-line depth in the draft and pick a guard that can compete for the starting spot at left guard.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they should have added a veteran at tackle rather than trying to hope that the developmental first round tackle that's going to be available where they pick is the guy, because that's just not worked for them recently. So I'm all for solving that with a veteran. I'm just interested that Jaylen Moore was the target, like this guy who has more unknown about him than I think pretty much any other option they could have gone for. It's just fascinating to me that they identified him. As you said, it's not like this was the last guy available and they just had to grab somebody. It's like they clearly targeted Jaylen Moore as the guy that was the answer to this thing, which I think is really interesting given his career, just given how little sample size, how much unknown there is to him. So that's pretty fascinating. I think Suamataia might be the answer at left guard for them. They already moved him in there in that meaningless Week 18 game, which suggests that they might just give him the shot to win that job. I'm all for adding another body in the draft, make that a competition rather than just anointing him as that left guard, but he might be the guy that starts there for them. But yeah, like it's, this team that was, a Super Bowl away from like greatest dynasty ever talk, it has quite a lot of like question marks and sort of flux and just general turnover and turmoil than we're used to.
Say it with me, Sam. Big draft for the Chiefs. It's a big draft. I know they just opened up $50 million of cap space, restructuring Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones just for the average fan who thinks that's like a mind-blowing thing. That's, the expected move, right? The Chiefs are opening up the cap space to make these moves that they just agreed to the last couple of days. So that's why that's all happening.
For Mahomes in particular, I mean, that was basically the whole point of that contract, right? Is this was how this deal is going to work. Every single year, they will restructure that deal and free up a ton of cap space. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.